name is Rick Thompson. I grew up in a small town in East Texas. I think we had 2 red lights, so it was a very community-driven youth, which has served me well growing up and then working in the line of work that I work in. But, my father was a pharmacist and then sold his business and got into politics, was county judge there in our Polk County for 24 years. My mother taught school for 27 years. So, we're embedded in that community and working on issues as we dealt with disasters and, things like that. So all those things had a really good part in my upbringing to help me do what I do today, because it's all about networking and talking with folks. Went to SNHU Houston after several different colleges, and I got to give a shout out to Professor Pettigo, because I struggled through college my first couple of years because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had an issue. I was doing general business, which was not at all interesting to me, and he finally asked me, he goes, "Why don't you do political science? Because you like that." And it just never occurred to me. So, it took somebody like that to spur me on, and after that, I was off. I worked 5 years at the prison at night to finish college, and then when I graduated, I was very fortunate. I was playing golf with a gentleman who worked in Austin for a trade association, and he asked me what I was going to college for, and I told him when I graduate, I was going to move to Austin and work for our state rep. That's one way to get into this line of work. And never said anything about it. And then the next day he says, "Well, if you can graduate by December, I'll have a spot as a policy analyst in our legislative shop." I said, "Okay." So, I quit the prison pretty quick and then loaded up my schoolwork and finished. But I graduated on a Saturday and started working on a Monday. In Texas, we meet every other year for 140 days. So, this was coming up in December, and January we started session, so he needed me coming in right then. And don't get me wrong, I didn't come here from Sikkim about what was going on. You can learn a lot of things through your education side, how a bill becomes a law and stuff, but it was quite the overwhelming task of getting involved in the system. And fortunately, I wasn't thrown to the wolves. I had a lot of great people there that trained me the correct way, made me do my own research versus asking questions and things like that, which has served me so well throughout my career. It's a great opportunity working for this association, and I got to work. I worked there for 23 years and retired last year. It was a great run. I served as a legislative analyst for the County Judge Commissioner Association. So I worked with this association that represents all 254 commissioners courts in the state of Texas. And the great thing about working with this association is there are so many issues that you wouldn't even think about that counties deal with, that I had to learn and then understand and then help fashion legislation that doesn't negatively harm them. And so it's an example of one way that you can get into this political science world that I never would have thought of. It never occurred to me that this job even existed, and it served me well. I had a great run, and then I was able to retire, and then I opened up my own lobbying firm. And I'm actually have a contract with the Judge and Commissioners Association, the individual association. So I'm still working with them, along with doing some hospital district stuff and some cybersecurity things. And so it's fun to play in a little different field, but it's all, real interesting to see the different angles of what you can get involved in this business. Because you don't have to be a legislator or or a candidate or a staffer. There's just so many different angles into this world to get started in. But that's kind of my background and what I learned and some of the people that helped me. And there's a lot. Okay, well, I'll talk more lines of in session, out of session, because in session, that's it. You're in session and your life goes on hold as you spend the 140 days, or what turns out to be last year is we were in special sessions, 4 of them, so we're the entire year. But during the regular session, the first 60 days is bill filing. And in Texas, because we meet every other year, we get a lot of legislation filed, 150 House members, 31 Senate members. So we're dealing with about 7,200 bills to 7,500 bills. And counties who I represent, about 2,500 of those bills affected. So I spend a lot of time reading bills. We have a group. We have people who represent major urban areas, and then we have other associations like Conference of Urban Counties, and we get together every night to discuss bills and what we're prioritizing and who's going to be where to testify, who's talking with that office to fix the bills, or, because legislators don't want you to come in there and kill their bill. They'll ask you, what can we do to make it better? And most of the time we can do that. Sometimes we'll have to agree to disagree, but that's a big part of it, is the homework, and then reaching out to our counties to actually figure out what we would call a fiscal note. What's the financial impact of this? Because our job is to help fashion legislation that doesn't require them to raise taxes, because that's how they pay for everything. And that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress, and it moves pretty fast as the session gets on. But that first 60 days, not much is happening. It's a lot of handshaking, but bill filing makes the lobby side work a lot. But then when the committee process gets up and going, then we're testifying. We're, dropping cards of support or opposition to different pieces of legislation. That's the one thing about our nightly meetings is, I'm going to be at this committee, you be at that one, and it's divide and conquer, so to speak. And it's a lot, because there's so many bills that are moving so fast. It's hard to keep up, and then you got to prioritize. I mean, what's the best use of your time? And you don't always get that right, and it's a lot. So you do that, and then towards the end of the session, the bills, when they go to the floor, you spend a lot of time watching the debates, and you'll be texting members, or you can go down outside the gallery and send a note in, and they'll come out and talk to you if you have a piece of legislation that you're working with. And but that's all based on your experience of working with those members and the credibility you built with them, because they're not going to come out if they don't know you or they don't trust you. And these are things that can make you effective if done right, because I very seldom pull them off the floor. I'll go talk to their chief of staff, because 9 times out of 10, if you want anything done, the staff is going to get it done when you're dealing with the legislative process. I explain that to our county officials as we take them to the Capitol. Like, look, we're going to meet with the chief of staff. Well, I want to meet with a member. Well, I understand, but we want this bill to pass, and that's who's going to get it done. And so working with the staff and treating them the way they should be treated, is something that we always emphasize with our county officials. And of course, they get it. I mean, they're generally like that anyway, but it's a good reminder. Once the session gets through, the one thing we always tell our folks is, when a bill passes, but it still requires state agency rulemaking, your job's not done. Because they can totally gut your bill or change its purpose through the rulemaking process. And so we spend a lot of time working on that on beyond session, or communicating with the governor's office, getting legislative briefs for reasons why not to veto, or to veto bills. So it's a full-fledged process once you get through there. And condense that down. There's a lot more to the process, but to get those relationships, I spend a lot of time in the interim traveling the state of Texas. And I don't know how familiar y'all are with the state of Texas, but it's pretty big. and I get a lot of windshield time driving to, the Panhandle or going down South Texas or El Paso. So what? But I spent a lot of time meeting with my county officials and meeting with their legislators in their district, because it makes a huge difference when they see me with their locals, and it gives a better understanding of what their issues are, and working on them and working with them to find solutions that fit their issues. And then part of, the interim, they have interim studies is what they come together, and the speaker and the lieutenant governor assigns different topics for the legislature to study during the off year, and then they'll host hearings. And so we spend a lot of time writing testimony, and we always submit it in writing in case they want to cut and paste and put it in the report. But we do a lot of that, and then of course the election process. I spent a lot of time recently after the primary or before the primary working polls for certain legislators. I'm fortunate I can do it for the people who I want to. So other people have to do it because they have different clients that require them to support different folks. But don't get me wrong, working a poll is not a whole lot of fun, but it's very educational. You really get a better feeling for the electorate and what they're paying attention to, and it really serves you well. And I have some recommendations when we get to that point about that, because of I worked my father's campaigns, and then when I went to work for the trade association, we were prohibited from getting involved in campaigns because of the statute that created them. So I couldn't get involved. So I had really lost touch about the election side of things. And then so when I retired and I went back and worked a poll, I was shocked at the attitude and the perspective of the voters. I mean, it's a lot, and you see it, and you can see it in politics now. It's a lot less personal and more party driven. But when I was working the polls, it was about who the person was. Now it's more about the party and things, and that's a whole different issue. But it was, the point being, it was a great education for me, a re-education, to understand what the people who are running for are dealing with, and that really has served me well since I have gone out on my own, because I'm a lot more understanding and can help them fashion things that meet a certain expectation. I mean, there's ways to do legislation that doesn't necessarily have to, I guess the best way to say that is it can sound more along the lines of what the talking points of each party might be, but it actually does what you want it to, so it's all about framing your issue and so forth. So that's very interesting to me to see that huge change. Research on the issues is a big part of it. And then, like I said, the travel is getting out and getting to know the folks in their own communities. But that's how it goes, either with my old job or what I'm doing now. It's pretty much similar. And that's where I develop those relationships and trust with the folks, because that's what you need. And I enjoy it. Okay, well, first is putting yourself out there. There are so many opportunities in this world, many of them which your viewers will know way more about than I do, especially when we get into the social media aspect. One of the issues that I've worked with through our Judge Commissioner Association is just getting them a Facebook page. I mean, I know that's kind of outdated, but that's where the electric in Texas go right now. I mean, when you get out in the rural areas, Facebook is the platform where everybody uses. So we didn't have a presence, and I felt like there was a void of our information being out there. But social media is something that if you're good at and you're capable of helping people get their message out, that is huge. Because I mean, the old days it always had to be TV ads. Well, I'm not necessarily sure it has to be TV ads, and I'm gonna say it doesn't. Because you go on Twitter, you can go on Facebook, you can go on whatever and find a lot of information, and every legislator has every platform there is out there communicating. So I would certainly put that in the back of my mind as if you're looking to get in. I mean, if you want to work at the Capitol, I would argue that you could go volunteer to work on campaigns. Once again, you're putting yourself out there, you're getting to meet people that you'd never meet before. And then also the great experience that you have, because you may just want to end up running campaigns for a living. I mean, and that's a lot of fun, a lot of stress, but it's a lot of fun. But, there's those opportunities. I would say if I were in college right now, and I don't know if y'all have this, but many colleges, especially here in Texas, have internship programs where you can go work at the legislature. Not so much at the local elected positions, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't do an internship at your county or your city or township, whatever you have. But those are opportunities to get your foot in the door, because many times what I see is interns come from Baylor or UT or A&M. They'll come in, and then the next session they'll come back and be a policy analyst for a member, and then they'll, chief of staff, and the process is you come in, you work your way up in the office, and then once you get to a certain level that you're comfortable with, you can either be a lifer, which is great. There's a lot of people that work there for their entire careers, or you can use that as a stepping stone to get out into the lobby world. I've got a lot of friends who have some really big time lobby jobs right now, but they worked their way up and worked for representatives and went to the Senate and then worked for the governor and so forth. So those are opportunities to get in, at least from the legislative side. And I made some notes here I wanted to. There's other things that, if you got an issue that you're passionate about, I don't know, pick one. Healthcare. Well, there's association groups out there that are working on those issues. Getting involved in those associations or those groups and work on, there's a thing called citizens lobbyists. That means if you got an issue, our government is designed for you to communicate with them. So you could actually go up there and be your own lobbyist and advocate for issues that you're working on. But getting involved in that area, and if you're looking to expand that, you become a lobbyist the day somebody hires you to do something. So, obviously you got to register, but there are a lot of opportunities out there that people need help and they don't know how the first thing. So, you need to understand the process of how the legislature, the legislature passes laws and so forth, and at the congressional level, at the state level, or, there's a lot of help that people need at the city level or the county level too. So there's just a whole window, and there's a lot of these things I wish I knew when I started, that it just kind of think outside the box about how you want to get there. And for example, the urban counties have positions that they have full-time. They also hire outside lobbyists, but they hire full-time positions, IGR people, and they come up, and that's who I meet with every night during session, and they come and stay down here during session. But it never would occur to me that Harris County would have somebody, their legislative director. They come up there. It makes sense once you get involved, but that way you wouldn't have to live in Austin. You could live in Houston, or you could live in Dallas or El Paso, and we're seeing some of the smaller counties doing similar things. Cities do the same thing. So there's opportunities to get involved with your local level. So if I was looking to do that, I might work on a city councilman campaign or a county judge's campaign, and maybe work my way in that way to get the contacts, and maybe work my way into working in that area. So I think that's a pretty interesting process that you could do, and you never even have to leave home except for during session if you're doing the legislature. The other thing is, and I can't stress this enough, vote. And vote in the primaries. Don't wait till the general election. The decisions are already made. Gerrymandering has eliminated, basically, in most states, the general election, because there's not that many competitive races anymore. But volunteering to work elections is another great opportunity, just to get to understand the process. There's a lot to be learned. in dealing with the general public and the attitude of the voter, but it's also good knowledge to have as you get into this side of the process. I think we pretty much covered everything. A couple things I want to point out that I always try to do, and it's hard because it's hard not to take some of this stuff personally. But keep your cool and don't take it personally. I mean, it's tough because you're so involved and passionate about what you do. But always remember that, and be on time and turn off your ringer. You know, those are simple things. And I tell staffers this as when they transition out of the Capitol, and it's something that's very important to me, is when somebody hires you, they hire you for your services, not for your reputation. And that means when they hire you and they want you to do things you know are not the right thing, you do have the right to say no. I mean, you may end up looking for another job, but you don't want to give up your reputation for somebody. It doesn't happen very often, but I've seen it, and the downside far outweighs what you're doing. So it's a tough situation, but that's reality that is involved in this system. So I just always tell them, like, be careful, and if they fire you, holler at me, and I'll try to help you get on somewhere else. You know, it's just not worth it. And then the last one, if you have an issue that you're working, be prepared at all times, because you never know when you're going to have to answer the questions. And it's so hard to do, but you may run into your legislator at the grocery store, and they may bring it up. What was that bill that we were working? You know, always be prepared to the best of your abilities to answer the questions and present. And those are things that I try to use, other than, you know, treat people how your mom and dad taught you how to treat.